The story I'm about to tell is by far the most traumatic experience of my life. My therapist recommended I write it down as part of my healing journey. I figured since I'm doing this, I may as well share it with you all, and if somehow it makes it onto YouTube or something, then oh well. Aside from my therapist, the only other person I've told this story to is my girlfriend of 6 years. For reference, I live in rural Washington, I'm 32 years old, and I have a boring office job. Around 2 years ago, I started getting really overwhelmed with work and family issues. Like, really bad. I decided to find a hobby, something to take my mind off the real world. And there are a lot of hiking trails in my area, so I figured exploring them might be a good idea. Although previously, I was never really much of an outdoors person. Anyway, I started walking some of the smaller trails near my place, and I actually really started to enjoy it. I bought some gear, and I even lost 10 pounds in the first month or so. Look, I really love my girlfriend, and she joined me for a couple of outings, but if I'm being honest, there's something about being alone, just out in the wilderness, that's so peaceful. I felt hiking alone was really starting to improve my mental health, and that's what I did. Once I had hiked all the small, documented trails in my area, I started looking for new locations to continue my little adventures. I fell in love with this one trail in particular. It's about a 45-minute drive from my house, and I had only ever seen one other hiker there before. It was really out of the way. This loop, though, was incredible. At a certain point, you'd pop out of thick brush to an astounding view of the mountains, and then walk along a narrow but fast-flowing creek that continues for about 2 miles. On a random Thursday in April of 2023, I decided to take the day off work to go hike this trail. I'm not sure why this day in particular, I just felt like I needed to get out into nature. That morning was really chill, and I had my coffee at the kitchen table, scrolled through the news, and then loaded my pack into the blue Subaru Impreza. Yeah, I bought that car once I discovered my love for hiking. What did you expect? I pulled off the single-lane highway and parked as far on the shoulder as possible to get off the road, reached behind, grabbed my bag off the back seat, and got out of the car. The weather on this particular day was perfect. A deep blue sky, crisp air, and not a single cloud in sight. Nothing about this day or even the events leading up to it gave me any sort of anxiety or red flags. I started walking and felt great. I had tons of energy and excitement. The birds were chirping loudly and the sun was high enough that I could feel its warmth, which was a nice contrast to the cool air. I did get a bit chilly walking through a couple of areas where the trees were bigger and blocking out the sun, but those sections only lasted for a few minutes at a time. I was about an hour and a half into my hike when I noticed a small trail leading off to my left. I had seen it last time, and I remember making a note to my future self to explore it if I ever returned to this trail. To clarify, the main trail pretty much ran parallel to the stream, with only about 200 yards of forest separating it. For that reason, I knew I couldn't get lost because either way, I'd eventually hit the stream, or if I somehow did get turned around, I'd just come back to the main trail. I took the left and started walking down the new trail. It was more narrow than the main trail and had far more tree coverage, making it darker and cooler. I remember the ground also turned into more of a packed dirt as opposed to the loose kind of sand that the main trail had. As I walked further down, I became super aware of how quiet things had gotten. I could hear my boots impact the ground as I walked. The further I walked, the more narrow the trail got, and at this point, the brush on either side had gotten so thick, there was almost no sunlight coming through. The whole vibe of my hike had completely changed now. Instead of feeling happy and content, I was feeling a bit anxious, not to mention chilly. The further I walked, the stronger these feelings got. Eventually, I started to feel like I was being watched from either side, like something in the trees was following me. I remember my anxiety getting worse as I tried to push through the spooky thoughts in my head and just focus on the walking, but I was having trouble calming myself down. I was at the point now where I just wanted to be off the small trail and back to the main one with the bright, warm sunlight and the sound of the birds chirping. I started to ruminate about whether I should turn around and head back to the main trail, but honestly, I figured I'd be coming out to the stream soon and decided the fastest way out would be to continue forward anyway. My anxiety slowly grew to panic as I began to question myself. Maybe this trail wouldn't bring me out to the stream. It was then that I abruptly decided to turn around and head back in the direction I came. I wish I could say that's all that happened, that after 20 minutes I popped back out onto the beautiful sunny trail and enjoyed the rest of my hike. But that's not what happened. As I started walking back, the trail somehow got darker and colder, which I remember thinking didn't make any sense. My anxiety grew and my walking turned into a light jog. I tried to keep my wits about me, talking to myself, saying out loud, "It's all good, the main trail's just up ahead." I remember thinking, if it took me 30 minutes to get this far down walking, I should be able to get out of here in 10 minutes if I run. Well, 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then 20, and I still wasn't out. This is embarrassing to admit, but I was so freaked out and desperate to escape this trail that I actually started to cry as I ran. My self-talk slowly turned into pleading. I don't know who I was pleading with. The trail, God, myself, anyone. The fear and panic must have hit a limit because out of nowhere I stopped running and sat down on the side of the trail and just cried with my face in my hands. Like weeping, crying. There was a truth that I hadn't fully admitted to myself, and that was this trail did not look at all the same as it did when I was walking in. I didn't recognize any of it. Now, there were no areas with sunlight coming through. It was so dark, I swear the sky could have been completely overcast with storm clouds, and I was cold. Not chilly, but cold and shivering. The trees looked sparse, like they had lost most of their leaves. I guess I didn't notice that earlier, I thought to myself. After sitting there for 10 minutes, feeling complete dread and helplessness, I heard a faint sound. I thought maybe it was another hiker, and I looked up. There was nobody there, but the sound got louder. It was coming from down in the direction of the trail I had been trying to escape. It sounded like dry branches falling and snapping, but a lot of them, in a persistent noise. I focused my vision down the trail, and I tried to get a better glimpse of what was causing the sound. And what I saw haunts me to this day. About 50 feet in front of me, the branches on the trees that lined the trail were cracking and contorting, making a snapping and crunching sound. I know this sounds ridiculous, but if you've ever seen a scary movie where a little ghost girl crawls all over the place, twisting and contorting, it almost had the exact same effect, like jerky and mechanical. Suddenly, all my fear left. I stood up and ran as fast as I could down the trail. I ran harder than I ever had before. My lungs were burning and I was gasping for air, but I didn't stop. Then, unceremoniously, I shot out, back into the main trail. The sun hit my skin and I heard the birds singing. I kid you not, this was the most relieved I'd ever felt in my entire life. I actually laid down right then and there and thanked God. Eventually, when I got up, I glanced down the trail from which I had just emerged. Unbelievably, it was light and vibrant again, just how it looked before I had walked down it. Not menacing at all, and with no indication of whatever hell portal I had just experienced. I remember thinking to myself, I feel really bad for the next person who walks down that trail. Anyway, that's my story. I actually do feel a bit better after writing this. Reading it back, it doesn't seem like all that crazy of an experience, but I promise, this was no joke. Whatever it was, my advice if you ever go hiking, bring someone with you and do not walk down a narrow, dark trail.
If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks, and see you soon.